Alrighty, welcome. Uh, I'm just going to be talking about some concepts from OPS, Objective Personality System, just hopefully briefly, not too long. I've just been processing play versus blast, and I just find that dynamic to be fascinating. Um, because you basically see a distinction between like what those two animals are actually looking at, what they're actually perceiving, because the play animal is looking in the actual environment, and what that means is that when you see someone who is savior play, they're constantly there's always these funny things that are happening and they're noticing. And it's not always funny, but that's the easiest way to see it. Is like, okay, there's a joke that's made. What's a play joke, you know? And the way you can recognize it is that if you took a video of the situation and you rewound the video, you'll be able to find what was funny. And that's like, it's very play, you know? And the reason for that is because what the pieces of information that are being exchanged are all external. You know, it's what people are saying, it's what's happening. So it's all external and visible, which is why if you take a video, you can see it. And that's different from blast because when someone is blasting, like what I'm doing right now, you don't actually, if you took a video of me, you wouldn't know what I'm about to say because what I'm saying here is coming from my mind. I'm basically looping on something. I've got known information that I'm going to be presenting to you. And how are you going to know what that is? Now, it's really predictable because my known information, is building up over time. So I'm taking stuff in. If you were to watch me, you would know what I'm taking in. You'd be able to know what I'm going to say. But the blasters, kind of like the way that you'd notice a blaster is that they're going to take um, something from the external, probably something someone says, because that's the easiest way for a blaster to take in something is through their DE. And what they're going to do is they're going to have a take on it, and that take is going to always be the same. It's going to be coming from their known information, so they're going to stick to whatever that known information is, whatever it is, the perspective that the blaster has, they will make that perspective true of a situation, even if that situation is ambiguous or just not related at all to what they think it is. So the blasters kind of have to catch themselves because they're going to have hot takes, basically. And the reason they have a hot take is because they think everything's the same when it's not. Um, and this gets down to like the root of the difference between blast and play. And that's really because they both have DE, so they're both like talking to people, interacting with the tribe, thinking about what's being said, saying things. They're aware of that, but like, what's the difference? The difference is that one of them is pulling towards pulling things apart, basically saying, "Oh, this is not the same. This is different." A good example of this is like if you think about like relationships, for example, the play perspective, generally speaking, I know there's like a cultural perspective on this, but I'm just saying like, yeah, I shouldn't use this example. This is a hot take. This is my blast doing its hot take thing. So I'm not going to say this example. But the the play animal likes to take things and say, "Oh, these are different. They're different." And oh, and this is different. And oh, this doesn't really have a label. It's kind of this is special and this is also special and no, don't label them. I don't want them to be all the same. They're special, and they kind of like are pulling things apart. And it's just like they're opening things up, pulling things apart, pulling things out, drawing things out, saying yes and being like, "Oh, that's okay. No judgment." And just like literally very like lifting everything up, pulling everything apart, opening everything up, kind of seeing everything and not judging it, not labeling it. That's just what play is, and that's something that's true of play, regardless of like modalities and functions and stuff. That's just what play does, and um, the thing is, like a lot of times in personality, when you see someone's personality, you'll see maybe their masculine functions pushing, maybe you'll see their social type or whatever, and that can feel like a different side of the stereotype. But when you think about what the animal itself is, and you think about what it's doing, um, it's doing it all the time, and it's doing it in ways that you don't notice. And so it's just, I feel like there's a finer level of awareness that has to be developed to be able to break away from kind of like the stereotype of what play is, to be able to say that, okay, no, this thing that's going on is happening in every type of play everywhere, that opening up, that pulling things apart, no judgment, sameness, no sameness. And then the thing about the blast, of course, is it's the opposite, right? Because the blast is saying, it's trying to clump things together, and it's trying to say, oh, this is the same thing. Like, oh, this is part of this, this is a piece of this other thing. This is one thing that's growing. These two things are related. I understand it. Because that's the other thing. Understanding is a huge part of Blast, and also problem, solution. Those two things are really huge in Blast. And Play just doesn't even deal with that. Play isn't like problem. Why is this a problem? It is. What do you mean problem? They are. Three things which obviously can contradict, and the play person is happy with it. They're like, what? And then the blast person is like, wait, three things. Wait, what? No, but like, what is this? And the play person's like, why are you labeling it? And then the blast person is like, but isn't it really just connected to this other thing? And the play person's like, well, no, they're just free. And the blast person is like, no, because if they're connected, that's a problem. And the solution is, and the play person's like, I don't know what you're doing. I mean, you could just live with it. And the blaster is like, no, this is a problem because they're not labeled. I have to label them so I can find the connections, so that I can find a problem with them, so that then I can tell you what the solution is. And the play person is like, okay. Like, that is so true. Like, I don't know if you're gonna know how true that is, but it's so true. And I think maybe like the final thing I wanted to mention, because obviously I have known information here that I'm sharing. Probably the final thing is just to talk about how Blast is dealing with like larger chunks of information, and it's just like blasting, because of the OI that's in Blast. Blasters just dig in a little more to things, and you can see it when blasters try to be spontaneous and try to find their play energy, because they will say things like, oh yes, I've been spontaneous, I did this thing, and I actually figured out how it works, and now I understand it, and I can teach it to you. Do you want to know how it works? And you're just like, aha, you tried to play, but actually it ended up being a gear shift. You just shifted, and that comes from the fact that blasters also have lower consume, because if they're, and that means that a blaster doesn't naturally find new things to pull themselves out of whatever hole it is that they're inside of, that like whatever hobby or perspective or worldview it is that they have. They're not naturally trying to get out of it. They're naturally trying to dig deeper into it. And this is something that actually speaks really deeply to me, because it's a very visceral experience to really perceive yourself as a blaster, because it's like you can see the fact that the world is spread out to you like a map, and you can see that there's grids there's countries, however you want to think about it, and you're just literally, you're tunneling in. You've picked one grid and you're stuck in that grid, and then you find new grids there, and you're stuck in those grids, and it's just like you're spiraling down. You're just spiraling down into nothingness. It's like physics, like look at physics. That's just like it's like a huge like punch that's just driving down. It's like how much math went into figuring out the atoms and the subatomic particles, and now they're building hadron colliders to try to find quarks. Like, what is that? What is happening there? That is Blast. That is Blast going, what is the universe? And it's just like, man, I mean, you're getting farther away from the universe. Like, what is that machine that you're building? That's not the universe. The universe is here. There's a different direction, and I think that other direction is play, at least for me. That's the difference between like an OI and an OE thing, is that the OI is like digging down, trying to find fundamentals. Well, if everything's atoms and we've got a periodic table, now we can classify everything by saying it's just atoms. And that's it's not backwards, but it's an opposite way. It's saying, let's dig down and find the fundamental pieces, and then we can build back up and say, oh, this big thing that you want to study, well, now I can label every single thing in it, and then I can study the dynamics between those parts, and now I'll be able to tell you what it does. And that's great, it works, but basically what you start seeing in society is that if you imagine some kind of a baseline where everyone is, the blasters naturally kind of, they're like, I don't know the correct animal, but they basically are, it's like they're looking around for where to go, and then they pick a spot and they dive. And they're just like, and then every now and then they'll wake up, and when they wake up, they're like, and they pick a spot and they dive. And when they wake up, they're freaking out because they're like, oh my gosh, I'm above water. What is this? I'm outside. What is this? And they dive. They have to dive down again. And then the people who are play are not like that at all. They're the opposite. They're like, because they're constantly pulling things apart, because they're constantly like making distinctions between things and saying, no, this is different, this is new, this is something else, because they're constantly opening everything up, pulling things apart, they are actually drawn up. They're drawn upwards. And that's why, like, to a play person, they literally experience the world differently. They have an entire different perspective in their mind because they're taking in different things. They see things that are more frail. They are less permanent. I'm talking about their perceptions. The perceptions of someone who's savior play are like, oh, I saw that and now it's gone, and now I'll find something new, and they're completely fine with that. That is how they exist. And if you think about like the way you could stereotypically think of a play person making a bunch of jokes, and each one of those jokes, it has value in that moment, and over time it gains value because they gain a reputation as a funny person or as a fun person to be around, maybe, or it blows up on the internet or something. But every joke is separate. They all, like, the only thing that's connecting them is the identity of the person who's making that thing happen. And the thing is, jokes are like a good example to use here, but there's so many other things. Like, there's so many aspects of the dynamics between people that blasters will basically never see. And the reason they will never see them is because they've got their head down. They're into whatever interpretation it is that they already have. And so when something new happens, the blaster, sure, you can say the blaster has a larger understanding. That's true. They have a bigger theory in their mind than a play person, than a person with play, I should say. But they will then, because of that large perspective of known information that the blaster carries around with them, when they find something new, they suffer from confirmation bias. You can think of it as a balance between kind of what's being discovered and what's already known. And if that known information is larger, it has a larger mass, then that new thing that's being discovered is just going to be attracted to it. And so for the blaster, it's actually really hard to be able to take something new and say, no, I'm not going to say that it fits into my theory. I'm not going to say that it fits into my worldview. I'm going to just say that it is what it is and go find something else new. And that's real play, you know. It's not real play if they're like, oh, I found this thing and it's something new and now everything makes sense because it fits perfectly. And now, no, that's not. That's what blasters do. That's not what play does. What play does is it goes, oh, that's something new. Okay, I'm gonna find the next thing. It's like that's it. Um, and yeah, so it's just an interesting dynamic to notice. Um, and I've just been noticing that play is very beautiful, um, and just that play finds things that um, that you might not see otherwise, or you wouldn't see otherwise. Entire dynamics between people that kind of the blaster will be sitting there going, I don't understand this. And the the people who don't have that requirement, the people who don't need to understand, are just doing things without understanding them, and they're able to do things that are smaller. They're able to do these smaller interactions, like these like gestures, nods, a push, um, this tiny things, and they can create something in the moment that a blaster won't even notice is there, and it's like a force, and it can pull people, and it's literally like it's like um, I don't know what it's like exactly. Of course, I have theories. Of course, I think I know what it is, but I'm trying to just talk about it for what it is, which is just it's like an invisible part of experience. I don't think it's written about anywhere because the people who write are blasting. um, it's this void in knowledge. You can't find it written about. You don't hear people talking about it. When people talk about play, they're like, "Oh, this person is so fun." It's like, well, okay, they're fun, but how are they fun? How is someone fun? And it's like, what are they doing? Can you do that? No, you can't do that. Why can't you do that? And then people try to understand it. The blasters, they go 10 tips for how to. No, that's not it. And that's kind of, yeah, it's like, that's the main point. I'm kind of digressing. But play looks at the small things, blast looks at larger things. And neither one of those is good or bad. The blast ends up in confirmation bias, but they also have deep knowledge in certain areas. And the play is really fun and kind of can push and create fun or whatever really they want to create in the moment in a way that people can't really do anything other than just pop the bubble. They can't really change it. It's just there. And they create distinctions between things, which allows them to be really open. Um, and they can keep on going. They don't have to stop and kind of worry about what they have. They just move on to the next thing. And in a lot of ways, that's really healthy and is just like what a lot of people should be doing is learning to just kind of like, it is what it is. The understanding is fake anyway. Just move on, find the next thing. Um, and I feel like the reason for that comes from I don't want to blast, but I have to. I'm so sorry. It probably comes from the fact that there is most likely some kind of wiring in the brain that is, you could, I don't know, the subconscious is, you can't use words that people already use because the meanings are all muddled. Um, but there's wiring, I can just say what I mean because I can communicate clearly. um, so there's probably something in the brain that is dealing with basically smaller bits of information, smaller than language, even, because language itself is a manifestation of blasting, essentially. And what play is getting at is more like the look that someone just gave you, um, their posture, the energy you feel from someone. That's what play is really sensitive to. And that feels like something that exists inside of the brain. Um, it's like it's like the wiring of the brain, basically. That's probably evolved, and I think there's probably good evidence for that if you look into it. Because you can think of, like, if you think of like a person having energy, animals are aware of energy as well, and they don't have language, and that's because it's that subtle, those small pieces of force that are constantly exchanged between life forms, that other life forms will understand. Like a wolf who knows that this is the end of their territory. What's that? They're sensing energy. How do they sense it? From scent, maybe? Maybe they saw the other wolf, whatever. But that's something that's built into their brain. It's not something like, mm, I'm not sure. I'm just saying that the origin of that is a cognitive wiring thing. And what that basically means is that when you think about play, um, there's these little things going on in your mind that your mind is aware of, and they defy classification because as soon as you use a word to try to describe it, that word is too big for the thing. The word is too big, so you can't really describe it. They're just these subtle things, and they're just, you say like, well, so what was it? What do you think it was? And that's kind of the power of play. That's what they do. Someone with play can create meaning without using words, and then they ask you, what is it, and you tell them the thing. And blasting is obviously the opposite of that. Blasting is creating meaning using words. So play, that's why I'm saying play is more subtle. It's not using the words themselves, it's using that. So anyway, that's it. I hope that was enjoyable.